Greetings and welcome everyone to SpaceWeek Live for Sunday, January 10th, 2021. Got to get that right. So just a note, normally I don't lead with this, but you notice the live Q&A with Raw Space text at the top of the screen. Feel free to ask any space-related questions. They don't have to be specifically on the topic of the launch schedules or the other events we're going to discuss in the episode, but feel free to ask any of your space-related questions in the chat. Please make sure to tag my name, Raw Space, and that way we are sure to see it, and we will hold the questions until, or I'll hold my answers until later in the episode. So, looking back at the last week, being in the dead of winter in the Northern Hemisphere, launch schedules are fairly light at this time, but last week we had two things. We had a cargo ship depart from the ISS, and we had a Falcon 9 launch of a satellite. Okay. On Wednesday, was it Cygnus? So this is a Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft, cargo spacecraft to the ISS. This one is named, well, this mission was named NG-14 or CRS-14 alternately. This particular craft was called the SS Kalpana Chawla, named after the late astronaut that was lost on Columbia in 2003, along with 6 of her colleagues. It departed the ISS laden with trash and other unneeded equipment, and was deorbited, as with all cargo craft except for the SpaceX Dragon. The departure was successful, and it is lost to the ravages of Earth's atmosphere. Now, you may notice the Canadarm sticking out there from the space station. Cygnus is does not have an autonomous docking capability. That is, it must be grappled or captured by the space station robotic arm, and then brought in and manually berthed to a berthing port, unlike the Soyuz or the Progress or the SpaceX Dragon, which are able to dock themselves. Therefore, Cygnus also needs to be ungrappled, well, grabbed by the Canadarm and moved away from the berthing port, unberthed, and then released, at which point the spacecraft's systems can take over and move it to a safe distance from the station, after which they would engage in a deorbit burn to dispose of the craft. So then on Thursday, we had a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch TurkSat 5A. So SpaceX's launch schedule is pretty busy. They're the busiest single launch provider in the world, with the exception of, the busiest single launch provider in the world, with the exception of China's space agency. Depending on the year, sometimes SpaceX has more, sometimes China has more, but they're far and away conduct more launches than, Roscosmos or NASA or ULA, or Arianespace. So anyway, let's check out that launch real quick.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
Stage 1 chamber pressures are nominal. The vehicle is pitching downrange. We're now 30 seconds into flight on confirmation of good orbital insertion.
So here, let's fast forward to the landing.
And back on sea level, you can see here the drone ship. We have confirmation of good orbit on the second stage, and looks like we have a good landing on.
So we've grown well accustomed to successful launches and landings by the Falcon 9, but it's important to note that this stuff is not easy. There's a lot that can go wrong, and sometimes it does. The Falcon booster landings have been very successful. There have been, a couple of mishaps, but again, at least with the Falcon 9s, the booster landing is essentially gravy for SpaceX. It's a cost savings measure. When a mission is scheduled to land the booster, SpaceX passes that savings on to the customer. And when a landing is not successful, SpaceX just has to eat the cost. But they're such a prolific launch provider that they are able to absorb that cost. And now the story is different. The story will be different with Starship, because Starship is intended to be, well, first of all, not only is Starship intended to be a fully reusable craft, but it will be eventually carrying people. And if people are landing in the booster / in the Starship, then you really have a zero tolerance, or a near zero tolerance for mishaps, especially when there's no launch escape or no abort system, escape system capability. But yes, so let's hope that Starship is able to build upon the successes of Falcon 9 and become even more reliable. Then let's see. So that was it for last week. Not much happening on the calendar. Now, looking ahead to this week, let's see. Looking ahead to this week, we have a few things going on. Things are picking up. So on Monday, January 11th, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. GMT, the SpaceX Dragon 2 CRS-21 cargo spacecraft will depart the ISS. So last week Cygnus departed, and this week Dragon 2 CRS-21 will be departing. Now, this was the first Dragon 2 cargo mission to the ISS. SpaceX conducted numerous, approximately 20, Dragon cargo missions previously, but that was with the first version of the Dragon cargo craft, which was not autonomously self-docking and had to be grappled with Canadarm just like Cygnus does. But Dragon 2 is the same spacecraft design, the same airframe, if you will, space frame, if that's a word, as the Crew Dragon, which is higher tech. It has an autonomous self-docking capability. They really, unless something goes wrong, which it did not, neither the ISS nor the ground controllers need to take any action in order to dock the Dragon 2 spacecraft, because it does it itself. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, maybe, we have the big show, a high-altitude test flight of Starship SN9. Now, the launch window each of those days extends from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. That's 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. GMT. And it's important to note that the Starship development is taking place in Boca Chica, Texas, which is in the Central Time Zone, which is 1 hour behind Eastern. So if you see references to Boca Chica local time, then that will be 8 to 5 local in Central Time Zone. Launch and test windows, including static fires, for Starship typically last for 3 days, with a primary day and then 2 backup days. And our aside from, unless Elon drops a tweet, our primary mechanism for estimating, because SpaceX doesn't usually pre-announce these launches much ahead of time, our primary mechanism for guessing, estimating when they are going to conduct a static fire test or a test flight are the notices to airmen, or NOTAMs, from the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. If you go to TFR, so TFR stands for Temporary Flight Restrictions. What they are is basically a SpaceX has to file paperwork or whatever in order to arrange a temporary prohibition on flights over the area of the Boca Chica SpaceX facility for a specific time range within a specific date. And those TFRs are required by federal law in order for them to conduct a test, even a static fire test, because if the rocket explodes, that will present a danger within at least a few hundred feet of the ground, But especially for a test flight, the TFRs are required, as well as Cameron County, Texas road closure notifications. Now, technically speaking, I don't suppose Cameron County is required to publish. Well, I suppose they are. If they're road closures, they need to announce those. In any case, so if you go to tfr.faa.gov, it takes you to this page, which lists all of the currently active temporary flight restriction notices to airmen. And if you can see space operations here in Brownsville, Texas, which is close to Boca Chica. But if you want to limit the list further, because this can be a big list, just go to State and select Texas. Go. And then you'll see, you'll see some security TFRs in Van Horn, Rio Grande Valley, or VIP in Rio Grande Valley. We don't care about those. These security ones, I think, are related to Border Patrol on the Mexico border area. But in any case, we see here space operations. There are 3 of them. Well, there are 4 of them, actually. This old one is well, let's take a look. It says, okay, location Brownsville from December 31st through February 28th to provide a safe environment for space ops pursuant to that federal regulation. No pilots may operate an aircraft in the areas covered by this NOTAM except as described. From the surface up to and including 1,800 feet mean sea level. So there is sort of a blanket TFR that covers up to 1,800 feet over Boca Chica from, you know, for the next couple of months. And that's been the case for a while now. They have a sort of a 24/7 TFR that nobody can approach Boca Chica within 1,800 feet of the ground ever. Now, these other 3, this one, you see my highlighted, this one, and this one, are for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You see here Brownsville, Texas, Thursday, January 14th, Wednesday, January 13th, and Tuesday, January 12th. If we take a look at one of these, we see safe environment for rocket launch and recovery. So it's a little different. The other one said for space ops, sort of a generic term. But this one says provide a safe environment for rocket launch and recovery. And then if we look at the details, it says, okay, the same thing. No pilots may operate in the areas covered by this NOTAM. Airspace definition. So it defines a polygon. In this case, it's a 5-sided polygon. And you see this small square represents the other NOTAM that nobody can fly within 1,800 feet. The small black square represents the other NOTAM that covers ground operations. But then this larger NOTAM, or this larger TFR, I should say, covers a larger area extending out over the water, which is where they're going to launch. They launch out to the side over water, and then they do their belly flop, and they come back down, and they flip, and they're going to land on the landing pad. So this TFR extends from the surface up to unlimited. So this is a from the ground up to space TFR. So that is no flights in that area between 1400 UTC, which is 9 a.m. Eastern, and 2359 UTC, which is 6:59 Eastern PM. Now, the reason why I listed 9 to 6 on my calendar is because if you look at the Cameron County road closures, which are also required for these launches and tests, so CameronCounty.us/SpaceX, they have very conveniently listed these road closures. We see here, okay, January 7th, 8th, okay, 11th, 12th, and 13th, from 8 to 5 p.m. So remember, these are going to be central times, so that equates to 9 to 6 p.m. Eastern closures scheduled. So even though the TFR extends to 6:59 p.m. Eastern, the road closure only extends to 6 p.m. Eastern. And that's why, they can't, if there's not a road closure, they can't launch. If there's not a TFR, they can't launch. So it's the union of those two that are required. So that was a little bit of a deeper dive than usual into the scheduling of these things. But hopefully it makes more sense to you now. Then, oh yes, you don't want to see me, you want to see the calendar because we're not done. Then on, so that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then on Wednesday, January 13th at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT, Virgin Orbit Launcher 1 will attempt its second launch demo from its Boeing 747 carrier plane called Cosmic Girl, carrying 14 CubeSats for Elana 20, a rideshare mission serving NASA, various universities, and laboratories. If you may recall, or if you recall, the previous Launcher 1 demo a couple of months ago failed shortly after the launch. So the 747 carries it up to wherever they launch from, some altitude, with Launcher 1 rocket under the wing. Actually, is it under the? Yeah, it's under the wing, not the fuselage. Drops the rocket. The rocket engine ignites, and shortly they're supposed to head up to orbit, but their test was not successful, and the engine failed shortly after the launch. So hopefully this one will make it, especially since it has a bunch of scientific payload, CubeSat payloads that it's supposed to deliver to orbit. We don't want to see those lost. And the rocket, the rocket's expendable, but the payloads represent a lot of unique and sometimes irreplaceable blood, sweat, and tears by many, developers and researchers. And then on Saturday, December 16th at 2:38 a.m. Eastern, 7:38 a.m. GMT, a Rocket Lab Electron will launch its Another One Leaves the Crust mission, obviously in reference to leaving the surface of the Earth, from their usual launch pad in New Zealand. Now, it should be noted that the next Electron launch after this one, which is slated for sometime in the first quarter of this year, is planned to be Rocket Lab's first launch from their new launch pad at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport on Wallops Island, Virginia, where Northrop Grumman launches their Antares and Minotaur rockets from. So Rocket Lab has built themselves a launch pad there at that U.S. spaceport, and so their intention is to be able to, because they're a U.S.-based company, founded by a New Zealander and launching from New Zealand, but manufacturing facilities are in the U.S., and so they plan to, grant themselves a U.S. launch capability, which will, I guess, streamline the process, and provide them with perhaps different orbital shells that they would have access to from a different hemisphere of the Earth, as well as a different latitude. So so I'm not sure what there's no date for that yet, but we can look forward to it sometime in the next couple of months. And then finally, next Sunday, December 17th at 1:23 p.m. Eastern, 6:23 p.m. GMT, SpaceX Falcon 9 will launch Starlink 16, which will be the 17th batch of Starlink satellites. If that's successful, which all indications are we can expect it to be, that will bring the total number of Starlink satellites currently orbiting to 961. All right. So that is it for the schedule. Now let's get to the questions. Actually, first of all, before I get to the questions, I would like to gratefully thank and extend a hearty raw welcome to our new Rothling member, Sam Balashek, who joined us just a few minutes ago at the beginning of this stream. So welcome, Rothling Sam. Didn't forget you this time. I think he unmembered himself and then remembered just so that to see if I would skip him. Okay, and hopefully I got your name correct this time. All right. Questions today. All right. Don't read. We cannot see your cursor when you point to stuff. Yeah, I need to. You know what? I'll change that. Like normally during streams, I don't want my cursor visible, but in the case of SpaceWeek, it would be helpful. So I will try to fix that for next week, and I'm so sorry. Ian Pedler, I wonder how high the SNs can go without the booster. Oh, I saw somebody answer that earlier, and it was completely accurate. Without the booster, if you meant how high can it go if it blows up without the booster, then, but you mean without super heavy. Well, I believe so I did a brief look at the estimated mass of Starship versus the thrust of the Raptor engines and the mass and thrust of Falcon 9s. And the thrust of the 3 Raptor engines together is somewhat less than the thrust of the 9 Merlin engines on a Falcon 9. But the Starship should still be able to attain orbit from Earth's surface with the 3 Raptor engines that are on it. But I don't have access to the exact numbers, nor am I an orbital mechanics, whatever. I'm not a rocketologist, so only SpaceX could really tell you if it could reach orbit. But yes, it should be able to reach orbit without the super heavy booster. If you mean without the Raptor engines, then it's not going anywhere unless it blows up, in which case the nose cone might travel to a couple hundred meters high. Roger C. Will other tech companies launch satellite Wi-Fi constellations? Yes, there are 2. So, I mean, there's already... Well, no, not Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is... People use that term, but because they're used to using Wi-Fi in their house. But Wi-Fi specifically refers to a set of wireless protocols that are low power, short range, and only useful like within a building or in a small area. But satellite internet is an applicable term. And yes, the one other company which is currently in the process of deploying a low Earth orbit satellite internet constellation is OneWeb. They experienced a bankruptcy earlier in 2020, but they were able to recover from that. I think they were acquired by a benefactor or something like that, and they were able to get back on track as far as launching their satellites. They're going to have far fewer satellites than SpaceX, but they are the other satellite internet provider that's currently deploying their constellation, and they just conducted a launch in late December from was it late December, late November? Anyway, they just conducted another OneWeb launch late last year. As far as other providers, I'm not aware of any others at this time. Maria Kutajan, Elon Musk will try to bring Falcon Heavy back. There are a couple of more Falcon Heavy launches on the schedule, but there were not any last year. So SpaceX hasn't been continuing to develop new capabilities for the Falcon 9 or the Falcon Heavy because they are focusing on Starship. That's their plan for the future, is to transition pretty much to transition everything to Starship and Super Heavy. But there are a couple of Falcon Heavy launches on the schedule. In fact, 5. We're looking at maybe next month a Space Force launch for the U.S. Space Force. April, we've got another Space Force launch. It's, spy satellite type stuff. May, we have Viasat 3 series satellite launching to geostationary orbit. Now, these are all geostationary launches that from what I can tell. And then further along, we have in June of 2022, we have a Falcon Heavy launching Psyche, Escapade, and Janus, which are going to asteroid Psyche. And then the following, a couple months after that, in 2022 August, we have a Falcon Heavy launching yet another Space Force mission. So, yeah, Falcon Heavy is still in production. It's just not utilized very often because it's only needed when you're either launching something very heavy or, because we deploy satellites to geostationary orbit all the time with Falcon 9s and other rockets. But if you're launching something really heavy to geostationary orbit or something quite heavy beyond Earth orbit, such as to asteroid Psyche or elsewhere, then you need a heavy launch platform such as the Falcon Heavy. And that Falcon Heavy is by far the cheapest heavy lift launch vehicle in the world. All right, next question. Will I live stream the Dragon departure? Yes, that is coming up, but not this week. Unless I missed it. Let me just double check. Yeah. That's tomorrow. Yes, I'll be live streaming the Dragon 2 departure from the ISS. Mark Desire, I believe there have only been 3 Falcon Heavy launches so far in 3 years. I believe that's correct. You had the Starman launch, and then ArabSat, and then there was one other, and then there was a nighttime launch. And just those 3. Maria Kutujan. If Elon Musk gets back Falcon Heavy, he can bring back the Tesla Roadster Starman, only to see what happened with it. I mean, he could, but they would need to develop additional capabilities. They would need to, first of all, get some sort of propulsion device to rendezvous with Starman, who is in the Tesla Roadster, which, if you recall, is still bolted to the top of the Falcon Heavy upper stage booster. And because it's not removable, they would have to somehow attach their propulsion device or booster to the Falcon Heavy the old 2018 Falcon Heavy upper stage, and then apply propulsion to change its orbit to return back to Earth orbit or whatever. It's within the realm of possibility, but it would cost hundreds of millions to develop that mission, and it's really not, it would really only serve to sate people's curiosity. And I don't think Musk is interested in spending hundreds of millions of dollars to sate people's curiosity. But if he has some new thing to show off, then yes, he will spend a lot of money to, as the showman that he is, to showcase that. So, thus we have Starman in Elon Musk's personal Tesla Roadster. Sam Valashek, does SpaceX need a TFR for static fires? So you saw that they have a blanket TFR that covers months of time up to an altitude of 1,800 feet. But they did have, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they did have higher altitude TFRs for the dates of the static fires. Now, I forgot to mention earlier, they did successfully conduct the, I knew they were scheduled to do a static fire of the SN9. I think they completed it. I know they scrubbed once, and I think they conducted the static fire. If they haven't done it yet, please forgive me. But I sometimes miss the up-to-the-minute details on Starship development because it's too much to keep track for one person to keep track of. All right, Rob Jackson. Aren't satellites already messing with astronomy photographers' work? To a degree. I mean, you can go out on any given night, like on a clear night here in North Carolina. I'm a little ways outside of Charlotte, and our skies are very light polluted. And so on a clear night, you can go outside and see quite a few stars, but nothing even remotely approaching what you can see at a true dark sky location. But if you take your camera out there and you take long exposure photos or a series of photos, capturing star trails or whatever, then you can see lots of stars. Still not as many as a dark sky location, but more than you can see with your naked eye because the camera can drink in more light than your eyes can. So it was the 21st. It was the 21st of December, the night of the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. After photographing Jupiter and Saturn, I took my... here, let me show you. After photographing Jupiter and Saturn, I took my camera and set it up to do a star trails, to take non-stop 30-second exposures for all night, or at least as long as the battery lasted. And here is the result. Boop. So this is my star trails photo. Oh, it's a little bit zoomed. Oh, there we go. Now you can see the whole thing. So that's my star trails photo. I cleaned it up a little bit because what I had were about 13 or 14. No, I'm sorry. 30-ish, like 31-ish. Frames that had airplane trails across them. And I had to remove the airplanes so they didn't just make it look stupid. But I did not have to remove any meteors. Now, it could be that any meteors... I did, in fact, see 2 meteors that night with my own eyes. I was standing outside looking at Jupiter and Saturn, and one, I swear, flew directly in front of Jupiter and Saturn. It was amazing. I wasn't taking a photo at the time. I wasn't at my camera. I was talking to my neighbor. But I saw it, and I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. Because I very rarely see meteors myself. And the other one was, I actually did catch on film, or on sensor. I was taking a photo of the Pleiades, and so this is the Pleiades, and that streak you see at the bottom of the photo is a meteor. It's not an airplane. But those were the only 2 I saw. And in the course of, what was it? Gosh, how many photos did it take? 707 images went into this star trail composite. And in those 707 images, I did not see a single meteor streak. And I looked. That is okay. So, all right. Let me address this question immediately. Spaceflight Industries, SFS, is asking, how did you get your camera to make the stars swirl? So the reason why the stars are apparently swirling is, obviously, the stars aren't moving perceptibly. I mean, all stars are moving, but not to a degree that we can detect easily without long-term analysis. But the reason why it looks like the stars are swirling is because I had my camera attached on a tripod pointing at roughly in a northward direction. And what you're seeing is a manifestation of the Earth's rotation. Over the course of about 6 hours, I think maybe a little more. So if you follow a single streak, like, let's say, it's kind of hard to follow a single streak, but if you find a streak that both ends are within the image, so like about halfway up the left side, there's a wide white streak. If you follow that, and the end is very near the left edge of the photo. If you follow that streak to the end, to the right end, it's in the sort of the upper right area of the photo. That arc represents about 6 hours of Earth's rotation, because the Earth rotates 360 degrees in 24 hours. So over 6 hours, that's a quarter of that. And so if you draw a line from the ends of that white streak, and I wish you know what? Let me. Oh no, I'm not set up to like do MS Paint or whatever. But if you drew a line from each end of that white streak to the center of the swirl, which is actually just below the bottom of the picture, which is going to be Polaris, the North Star, which you can't see in the picture, then the angle formed by those two lines should be about 90 degrees, because 6 hours is 1/4 of 24 hours, and therefore the Earth will have made 1/4 turn. And so that's why that's what star trails are, is the sky revolving above our heads, centered on roughly on Polaris, because that is where the axis of Earth's rotation points up in space. You know, where the Earth is spinning, and the axis of that rotation points at the North Star, just next to the North Star. It actually is not quite exact, but yeah. So I love this stuff. I find it fascinating. Even though taking astrophotos is hard, and there are a lot of failures, and it's cold, and the equipment suffers because there's dew and condensation, and anyway, it's hard stuff, but rewarding anyway. So Mark Desire, there are well, with this upcoming launch of Starlink, there will be 961 Starlink sats. They are planning for many thousands more. How long is that going to take? I think the original plan was to finish their overall deployment, like their grand plan of all Starlinks, by, you know, after like the latter half of this decade, like maybe 2026, 2027, something like that. But the Starlink satellites are only designed for a lifetime of about 5 years. So there's going to be, and they do have they do have thrusters, ion thrusters, that can, you know, deorbit them at the end of their service life. That's the idea, is for them to self-destruct, basically, once they have reached their end of life, so that they don't present a lingering source of space junk. But yes, so Owen Salisbury, do you think deep space interest will be provided by SpaceX? I think SpaceX has done wonders for people's interest in space, as have, you know, science communicators such as, you know, I mean, the big media personalities, like, you know, like, as controversial as they can sometimes be, they've still ignited the flames of fascination in many people's hearts. You know, people such as Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, and the many, you know, content creators on YouTube and other platforms such as Scott Manley and Tim Dodd. I'm trying to contribute in my little way as best I can. But SpaceX, yeah, they are very, let's see, where am I? There I am. Yeah, they're very media savvy. They're very, I mean, they won an Emmy, for Pete's sake, for their coverage. SpaceX, a rocket launch provider and satellite maker, won an Emmy for their coverage of their Demo 1 mission back in 2019. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, I think SpaceX is doing amazing things, and it's built largely on the sort of excessive personality of Elon Musk. You know, I mean, there are other launch providers out there, but they're not. And plus, there is no other launch provider that's doing quite what SpaceX is doing. I mean, SpaceX is really pushing the envelope of treading new ground, and trying, like, with new capabilities. You know, SpaceX did not actually. They were not actually the first organization to successfully land a booster that had been to space. That was actually Blue Origin, a month prior to the first Falcon 9 landing. But they are the first to conduct a orbital class rocket booster landing, because New Shepard is suborbital. So it's an interesting rocket, but it's not an orbital class rocket. So we're dealing with a whole different magnitude of complexity and stresses involved. And so, and they're the tricks that we saw SN8 do a few weeks ago, amazing. Nobody had ever seen anything like that from a rocket before. No other vehicle in the history of mankind has ever done anything like that. Launching to a specific altitude, flipping over, doing a belly flop, doing a controlled descent, and then flipping back over and, landing admittedly too hard, because they lost thrust out of one of the engines, but yeah, and then doing a landing on the pad. I mean, it's just amazing. So hopefully Tuesday or Thursday or Wednesday, we'll be able to see that again with a successful landing from SN9. MVM Motovlog Music. Am I planning any more nighttime photography soon? I am great. I'm not going to say that. He says you are great, and he would love to see more pics. Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I should. The problem is oftentimes the weather is not cooperative. Plus, North Carolina tends to be very humid, and if there's a lot of humidity, it's not like that's. Not only is the seeing not going to be great, but also the equipment will just get soaked with an incredible amount of condensation, and I really don't want to ruin my camera nor my lenses. More so the lens, because the camera is old and needs to be upgraded. The lens, however, is good for a lifetime if you take care of it. And I don't want to get a bunch of moisture inside my lenses. Also, if there's any chance that it could be rained on in the middle of the night when I'm asleep, I don't want to do it. But what I do need to do is either fine-tune my technique of using my my Star Tracker mount. A Skywatcher Star Adventurer Pro. Or, I don't know if it's actually quite capable of handling my 600mm lens. It may be a little bit too heavy for it, because I've experienced some slippage or instability in the photos. But anyway, I either need to fine-tune my technique of using that mount, or find a more beefy, robust mount that can for sure handle my camera equipment. Especially because this is 2021. I have 3 more years until the next great American solar eclipse. And I have planned, ever since this channel started to take off a couple years ago, I have intended to do a live stream with my own equipment of that eclipse. I'm going to need more hardware. I'm going to need a video camera. I'm going to need I don't even know what I'm going to do for mobile data. I'm going to need some sort of reliable mobile data connection. I'm going to need a new camera body, and I'm debating. I need to do some research to determine what's the best camera body for that that would allow me to live stream the view. So yeah, I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to need to probably spend maybe a few $1,000s in equipment purchases in order to prepare for that. But I fully intend to do that, and unfortunately, I still have 3 years to prepare. But that 3 years will turn into 1 year, and then a few months quite quickly. Any chance I could MVM Motovlog Music, any chance you could live stream an astrophotography session? I'd actually like to do that. The problem is, my camera is about 10 years old now. The camera body, it's a Nikon D90, and it is a great camera. You know, it has taken, I don't know, many tens of thousands or over 100,000 great images for me. Well, some of them were great, but it's an older technology. You know, they have much better sensors now, and more sensors that are better in low light, sensors with less noise. Plus, being an old sensor and having been exposed to all sorts of abuse and radiation, etc., there are dead pixels. I had to clean those up in my Star Trails image too. One thing about astrophotography is you have to leave the camera exposed for, or the shutter open for extended periods of time, let's say 30 seconds or so. And the longer your shutter is open for, the more stray radiation particles and cosmic rays cause hot spots or hot pixels, as well as if you have any pixels on the sensor that are actually permanently damaged, which I do have a couple of those. And you don't notice it in normal pictures, but in, you know, sensitive, low light, sensitive photos you do. And yeah, so anyway, need a new camera body. I have to do a lot of research on that, but it's going to be exciting when I get it. And it needs to be one that can output live quality video, because my old D90 camera body, I tried using it to live stream the Mercury transit last year, or the year before, whenever it was, when Mercury flitted across the sun, or whatever, sauntered across the sun. But the quality was, I mean, I got pictures of it. Like, the pictures looked fine, but the live video output from the camera was pretty abysmal, and I couldn't remove the HUD, like the overlay, which was ugly. So, yeah. Spaceflight Industries SFS. When did the word rapid unscheduled disassembly become a word? Or when did the phrase rapid unscheduled disassembly, or RUD, become a word? I don't think that was coined by Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I mean, it's most famously uttered by Elon Musk, but I'm pretty sure I have seen that phrase prior to him. So I don't know actually when it was coined. It's probably decades old, honestly. But Elon Musk is it's most famous for having been uttered by Elon Musk during his rocket launch failure video that he published a couple of years ago. That was so popular, and everybody was like, "Look how cool Elon is! He posts his failures." All right. Mr. DQ, Raw Space is the calmest voice ever. Sometimes I try to keep things pretty chill. There's a lot of very loud voices out there, and very hyper voices out there, and that just is not my preference. I like to keep things chill and relaxed, and so I will continue to try to do so for you. And you know, if people want hyper and excited, then, you know, I'm not your man. I get excited. I get really excited, but I don't usually express that by jumping up and down and tittering. I don't mean to be rude to anyone. It's not my personality. Chris V says 4K Blackmagic camera. All right, so I think that'll wrap it up for this week. Thanks to all of you who are still with me, and thanks to the subscribers, returning visitors, members, and newcomers as well. So until next time, maybe tomorrow, when the Dragon 2 craft departs the ISS, or until Space Week next week, keep it raw, and I'll see you next time.